Hello, dear friends. Welcome to another fascinating journey through the world of knowledge and personal transformation. Today, we are going to dive into a topic that arouses the curiosity of many and has the power to change lives: the rich mindset versus the poor mindset. Have you ever wondered how our way of thinking can shape our financial reality? Get ready for a reflection that could change the course of your lives. In a small town in the countryside, there lived two inseparable young friends, Carlos and Marcos. Both came from humble families and shared the dream of achieving a better life. As they grew up, their paths began to take surprisingly different directions, not due to external circumstances, but because of the different mindsets each developed over time. Carlos was always a curious and observant boy. Early on, he noticed that the successful people in the town had different habits and attitudes from the rest. He started paying attention to the conversations he heard in his parents' small grocery store, where local business owners frequently shopped. Carlos noticed how they talked about investments, opportunities, and future plans with enthusiasm and confidence. Marcos, on the other hand, grew up hearing phrases like money doesn't bring happiness, and the rich only get richer by exploiting others. He absorbed these ideas and began to view the financial world with distrust and even a bit of resentment. To Marcos, the idea of wealth was associated with something negative and unattainable for ordinary people like him and his family. After finishing high school, both got jobs at a local factory. Carlos saw the job as a stepping stone, an opportunity to learn and grow. He arrived early, stayed after hours to better understand the processes, and always volunteered to help with new tasks. His enthusiasm and dedication did not go unnoticed by the supervisors. Marcos, however, saw the job merely as a means of survival. He did the minimum necessary, complained about overtime, and looked forward to the weekend. To him, work was a necessary burden, not an opportunity for growth. This difference in perspective began to create a gap between the two friends. Over time, Carlos started saving part of his salary. He gave up some immediate pleasures to invest in courses and books about finance and entrepreneurship. Every penny saved was seen by him as a brick in the construction of his future. He spent his nights studying and planning, always with his eyes set on the horizon of possibilities. Marcos, on the other hand, spent his entire salary, arguing that life was too short to worry about the future. Live for the moment, was his motto, even if it meant starting each month in the red. He mocked Carlos's efforts, calling him a tightwad and insisting that he was missing out on the best years of his life. One day, the factory announced that it was looking for a supervisor for the night shift. Carlos saw this as an opportunity and prepared hard for the selection process. He studied leadership, industrial processes, and even took a basic people management course. Marcos was not interested in the position, saying it wasn't worth the extra stress for a few extra bucks. To no one's surprise, Carlos got the promotion. With the pay raise, he did not change his lifestyle but intensified his investments. He started participating in local investor groups and studying the financial market. Each new piece of knowledge was like a piece of a puzzle he was patiently putting together. Marcos, seeing his friend's success, felt a mix of envy and disbelief. You're lucky, he would say, not realizing the hard work behind Carlos's achievements. Marcos's mindset prevented him from seeing the opportunities right in front of him, while Carlos seemed to have a radar for detecting them. 3 years passed, and the factory faced a crisis. There were layoffs, and Marcos was one of those let go. He found himself desperate, with no savings and accumulated debts. The reality of his financial situation hit him like a speeding train. For the first time, he began to question whether his thinking about money was correct. Carlos, who had prepared for tough times, not only kept his job but was in a position to help his friend. He offered Marcos an interest-free loan and, more importantly, was willing to teach him about financial education. It was a golden opportunity for Marcos, a chance to rewrite his financial story. Initially resistant, Marcos began to realize that his mindset had limited him for years. He started questioning his beliefs about money and success. With Carlos's guidance, Marcos began a process of financial re-education. He learned about budgeting, investing, and the importance of having multiple sources of income. The journey was not easy. Marcos had to unlearn years of negative habits and limiting beliefs. There were moments of frustration and the desire to give up. But with each small victory, like paying off a debt or making his first investment, Marcos felt his confidence grow. He began to see opportunities where he once saw obstacles. Meanwhile, Carlos continued his ascent. He was promoted to factory manager and, in parallel, started a small consulting business. His growth mindset led him to constantly seek new challenges and learning experiences. He did not see success as a final destination, but as a continuous journey of evolution and learning. A turning point in Marcos's life came when he decided to start his own business. Inspired by the transformation in his mindset, he identified a need in the community: financial education classes for young people. With Carlos's support and mentorship, Marcos structured a simple but effective course. In the beginning, few believed in the idea. But his persistence and the growing demand for this type of knowledge made the business prosper. 5 years after the start of his transformation journey, Marcos found himself in a position he had never imagined. His financial education business had grown, he was debt-free, and for the first time in his life, he had a comfortable financial reserve. More than that, he had become a reference in the community, helping others transform their financial lives. The story of Carlos and Marcos spread throughout the town. Many people began to seek their advice and guidance. They realized they had the opportunity to impact even more lives. Together, they decided to create a foundation to promote financial education in local schools. The project quickly gained support from businessmen and the city council. The impact on the community was profound. Young people who once saw financial success as unattainable began to dream big and, more importantly, to act towards their goals. Entire families changed their relationship with money, reducing debts and improving their quality of life. The city, as a whole, experienced an economic boom. Carlos and Marcos, now business partners and on a mission to educate, often reflected on their journey. They realized that true wealth was not just in the numbers in their bank accounts, but in the ability to generate a positive impact. The rich mindset, they concluded, was not about accumulating, but about creating value and abundance for themselves and others. As their influence grew, Carlos and Marcos were invited to share their story at national conferences. They saw that the problem of a limiting mindset towards money was not exclusive to their small town, but a national challenge. This inspired them to further expand their mission. Looking back, both Carlos and Marcos could clearly see how their initial mindsets had shaped their paths. Marcos's journey, in particular, was a powerful testimony to how it is possible to change. He often told his students, "Hey, if I could change my mindset at 30, after a lifetime of thinking in a limited way, anyone can." The legacy that Carlos and Marcos built went beyond individual financial success. They created a movement of financial awareness and empowerment. Their stories inspired books, documentaries, and even an educational TV series. Most importantly, they proved that the rich mindset is not a privilege of a few, but a choice available to all who are willing to learn and grow. And so, dear listeners, we come to the end of this inspiring story. Carlos and Marcos' journey shows us that true wealth begins in the mind. No matter where you come from or what your current circumstances are, a change in mindset can open doors you didn't even know existed. Remember, every choice, every thought, every action brings us closer to or further away from our goals. May this story inspire you to cultivate a mindset of abundance, growth, and infinite possibilities. The future is in your hands. The impact of Carlos and Marcos' work did not remain confined to their hometown. As their reputation grew, they began receiving invitations to speak in other cities and states. Initially hesitant, they soon realized that this was an opportunity to expand their mission and touch even more lives. During one of these trips, Carlos met Ana, a young entrepreneur who had built a financial education app. Impressed by the innovation and potential reach of the tool, Carlos saw an opportunity to join forces. After long conversations and careful planning, they decided to integrate the content developed by Carlos and Marcos into Ana's app. This partnership opened new doors and challenges. Suddenly, Carlos and Marcos found themselves navigating the world of technology and digital entrepreneurship. It was a period of intense learning, with sleepless nights and numerous obstacles to overcome. But the growth mindset they had cultivated over the years kept them resilient and focused. Meanwhile, back in their hometown, the impact of their work continued to multiply. The foundation they had created to promote financial education in schools was flourishing. Teachers reported significant changes in students' behavior and aspirations. Entire families were transforming their financial realities. One day, Carlos received an unexpected call. It was his former boss from the factory, now retired. He had followed the journey of Carlos and Marcos and was impressed with what they had achieved. The former boss confessed that he had initially doubted Carlos's potential but now clearly saw the power of a growth-oriented mindset. This conversation led Carlos to a deep reflection. He realized that many business leaders, even successful ones, still operated with a limited mindset when it came to developing the potential of their employees. This inspired him to develop a new training program focused on business leaders to help them identify and nurture their team's potential. Marcos, on the other hand, was increasingly involved with the community aspect of their work. He started a microcredit project in the city, offering small loans and mentorship to local entrepreneurs. The project quickly gained traction, with inspiring stories of small businesses that flourished thanks to this initiative. One such story was that of Dona Maria, a lady who sold homemade cakes. With the microcredit and Marcos' guidance, she managed to expand her business, buy better equipment, and even hire helpers. In less than a year, Dona Maria's cakes became famous in the region, and she was considering opening a small factory. The success of the microcredit program attracted the attention of social investors. Marcos found himself facing an opportunity to expand the project to other cities. However, this would mean moving away from the daily work with people, something he greatly valued. It was a difficult decision-making moment that made him question his values and priorities. After much reflection and conversations with Carlos, Marcos decided to accept the challenge of expanding the program. He realized that by creating a replicable system, he could impact many more lives than by working alone. This decision marked a new phase in his journey, requiring him to develop new leadership and large-scale management skills. Meanwhile, the app developed in partnership with Ana was rapidly gaining users. The feedback was extremely positive, with people reporting significant changes in their financial lives thanks to the content and tools offered. Carlos and Anna began receiving invitations to present the app at technology and finance conferences around the world. At one of these conferences, Carlos met a group of researchers studying the impact of financial education on mental health and overall well-being. Intrigued by the preliminary results, which showed a strong correlation between financial literacy and reduced stress and anxiety, Carlos decided to collaborate with the research team. This collaboration led to valuable insights into how financial mindset affects not only our bank accounts but also our health and relationships. Carlos and Marcos incorporated these findings into their programs, developing a more holistic curriculum that addressed not only finances but also emotional and psychological well-being. As their work gained national recognition, Carlos and Marcos were invited to advise the government on financial education policies. They found themselves in meetings with ministers and legislators, debating how to integrate financial education into the national school curriculum. It was a moment of great responsibility but also of immense opportunity to create systemic change. During this period, Marcos faced a personal challenge. His father, who had always been skeptical of his work with financial education, was diagnosed with a serious illness. This forced Marcos to balance his growing professional responsibilities with the need to care for his family. It was a period of intense stress but also personal growth. The experience with his father made Marcos realize the importance of including financial planning for health and retirement in their programs. He developed a special module focused on financial preparation for medical emergencies and old age, which became one of the most popular and impactful parts of their curriculum. Meanwhile, the training program for business leaders developed by Carlos was gaining momentum. Large corporations began adopting it, reporting significant improvements in employee engagement and productivity. Carlos found himself traveling across the country, conducting workshops and seminars for top executives. One of these executives was the CEO of a large retail chain who was so impressed with the program that he decided to implement it throughout the company. The result was a remarkable cultural transformation. Employees who previously felt stagnant began seeking growth opportunities, and the company saw a significant increase in innovation and customer satisfaction. This success story caught the attention of the national media. Carlos and Marcos found themselves in the spotlight, with interviews on TV shows and reports in major newspapers. While gratifying, this exposure brought new challenges. They had to learn to handle fame and public pressure while staying true to their mission and values. The growing visibility also attracted critics. Some argued that their approach was too simplistic for complex economic problems. Others accused them of promoting a magical thinking that ignored the systemic realities of economic inequality. Carlos and Marcos had to learn to respond to these criticisms constructively, acknowledging the limitations of their work while defending its positive impact. This period of public scrutiny led to deep reflection. Carlos and Marcos realized they needed to refine their message and address broader issues of economic justice and opportunity. They began collaborating with economists and sociologists to develop a more nuanced understanding of the financial challenges faced by different social groups. This evolution in their thinking led them to launch a series of initiatives focused on historically marginalized communities. They developed specific programs for women entrepreneurs, low-income youth, and small farmers. Each program was carefully tailored to address the unique challenges faced by these groups. One of these programs, focused on youth from low-income urban areas, had a particularly profound impact. Combining financial education with mentoring and internship opportunities, the program helped hundreds of young people break the cycle of poverty. Success stories began to emerge. Young people who were the first in their families to go to college, others who started successful businesses in their communities. Inspired by these results, Marcos decided to take the program a step further. He established partnerships with universities and tech companies to create a scholarship and learning program in programming and digital entrepreneurship. The goal was not only to educate but also to create concrete pathways to high-potential careers. Carlos, meanwhile, was increasingly intrigued by the potential of blockchain technology and cryptocurrencies to democratize access to financial services. He began to study the subject intensely, seeing it as a possible revolution in how people interact with money. However, he was also aware of the risks and complexity of the topic. This period marked a new chapter in the journey of Carlos and Marcos. They continued to grow and evolve, always guided by the same principles that had brought them this far: a growth mindset, a commitment to education, and a desire to create positive change in the world. And so, their story, which began in a small town, became a testament to the power of knowledge, perseverance, and the belief that anyone can change their reality with the right mindset and tools. Determined to address the issue responsibly, Carlos developed an introductory course on emerging financial technologies. The course not only explained the basic concepts but also emphasized the importance of critical thinking and risk management when dealing with these new financial tools. Meanwhile, the app they had developed with Anna continued to evolve. They incorporated artificial intelligence features to provide personalized financial advice to users. The app could now analyze spending patterns, suggest saving and investment strategies, and even predict potential future financial difficulties. This technological advancement, while exciting, also brought new ethical challenges. Carlos and Anna found themselves debating issues of data privacy and the responsibility of providing automated financial advice. They decided to form an ethics committee to oversee the development and use of AI in the app, ensuring that the technology was used responsibly and beneficially. As their work continued to expand and evolve, Carlos and Marcos realized they needed a more robust structure to manage their various initiatives. They decided to create an umbrella organization, which they called a Financial Horizon, to coordinate all their programs and projects. Financial Horizon quickly became a driving force in financial education and economic empowerment. With dedicated teams for research, program development, technology and community engagement, the organization was well positioned to tackle the financial challenges of the 21st century. One of these challenges was the rapid advancement of automation and artificial intelligence in the job market. Carlos and Marcos recognized that many of the careers they were preparing people for might not exist in the near future. This led them to completely rethink their approach to financial and professional education. They began to emphasize skills such as creativity, adaptability, and continuous learning in their programs. The goal was no longer just to teach people how to manage money, but to prepare them to thrive in a world of rapid and unpredictable changes. Marcos led the development of a new curriculum called A Flexible Financial Future. This program combined traditional financial education with training in future skills, such as computational thinking, design thinking, and emotional intelligence. The program was adopted by schools and universities across the country, receiving praise for its innovative and forward-looking approach. Meanwhile, Carlos became increasingly interested in the concept of the circular economy and its relationship with personal finance and sustainability. He began to explore how sustainability principles could be integrated into financial education, promoting not only individual prosperity but also collective and environmental well-being. This new direction led to the creation of a pioneering program called Finances for a Sustainable Future. The program taught people to make financial decisions that were not only beneficial to them but also to their communities and the planet. This included modules on ethical investing, conscious consumption, and social entrepreneurship. As their work continued to evolve and expand, Carlos and Marcos began to think about their legacy. They wanted to ensure that the impact of their work would extend far beyond their own lives. This led them to initiate an intensive mentoring program, identifying and nurturing the next generation of financial educators and social entrepreneurs. This mentoring program soon became one of the most rewarding aspects of their work. Seeing passionate young people take on the mission of financial empowerment and lead it in new directions was incredibly fulfilling. Carlos and Marcos saw in these young individuals reflections of their own journeys, but with new perspectives and innovative ideas. One of their mentees, Luana, a bright young woman from a low-income community, developed a revolutionary financial literacy program for children. Using games, stories, and interactive technology, Luana's program was transforming how children learned about money from an early age. Inspired by Luana's work, Carlos and Marcos decided to focus even more on financial education for children and families. They launched a series of children's books on financial concepts, which quickly became bestsellers. These books not only taught about money but also addressed values such as generosity, responsibility, and long-term planning. While their educational empire continued to grow, Carlos and Marcos never lost sight of their roots. They made it a point to regularly return to their hometown, where it all began. There, they continued to work personally with local families, always remembering the power of personal connections and direct impact. During one of these visits, they encountered a situation that deeply moved them. The factory where they had started their careers was about to close, threatening to leave hundreds of people unemployed. Without hesitation, Carlos and Marcos mobilized their resources and connections to help. They not only offered retraining programs for the employees but also worked with investors and the local government to revitalize the factory. The plan was to transform it into a center for innovation and entrepreneurship, focusing on sustainable technologies. This project became a model of how communities can reinvent themselves in the face of economic changes. As they approached their 50s, Carlos and Marcos reflected on their journey. They had started as two young men with very different mindsets and now were leading a global movement of financial education and economic empowerment. However, they knew their work was far from over. A new challenge arose when a global economic crisis rocked the markets. Millions of people saw their savings disappear overnight, and panic spread rapidly. Carlos and Marcos realized that this was a crucial moment to put their teachings into practice on a large scale. They quickly mobilized their organization, Horizonte Financiero, to launch a massive campaign of education and financial support. Using all available platforms, from social media to partnerships with local governments, they began disseminating practical information on navigating the crisis. The app they had developed proved to be an invaluable tool during this period. They added a new module on financial crisis management, which offered personalized guidance based on each user's individual situation. The app helped people prioritize expenses, negotiate debts, and find assistance resources. Marcos started an initiative to create financial resilience centers in communities across the country. These centers offered free financial advice, job skills workshops, and even mental health support to help people deal with financial stress. So many people needed help that they had to quickly train thousands of volunteers. Carlos focused on working with business leaders and politicians. He argued that the crisis was a chance to completely rethink how our economic and financial systems worked. His ideas for a more inclusive and resilient economy started to get attention from important people. One successful project during this time was the Community Recovery Program. This program encouraged communities to come up with their own local economic solutions. This included things like creating local currencies, community banks, and worker cooperatives. The program not only helped many communities survive the crisis, but also made them stronger and more self-sufficient in the long run. As the crisis began to ease, Carlos and Marcos realized they had learned valuable lessons. They saw firsthand how financial education could be a lifesaver during hard times. This inspired them to work even harder to make financial literacy a basic right for everyone. They started a big campaign called a Financial Education for All. The goal was to make sure that every adult and child in the country had access to quality financial education by 2030. This involved working with schools, businesses, nonprofits, and governments at all levels. One important part of this campaign was financial inclusion. Carlos and Marcos realized that many people were still left out of the traditional financial system. They started exploring how new technologies, like blockchain and decentralized finance, could help create more inclusive and accessible financial systems. Meanwhile, Marcos became increasingly concerned about the impact of climate change on long-term financial stability. He started a new research branch at Horizon Financial focused on climate finance. This project explored how individuals and communities could prepare financially for the challenges posed by climate change, as well as invest in sustainable solutions. Inspired by Marcos's work, Carlos started to include sustainability principles in all of Horizon Financial's programs. He argued that true wealth couldn't just be measured in money but had to include personal, community, and environmental well-being. This holistic approach to wealth started to change how many people thought about financial success. As their influence grew, Carlos and Marcos were invited to speak at important international events, including the World Economic Forum and the United Nations. They used these platforms to advocate for a new global approach to economics and finance, one that prioritized human well-being and environmental sustainability over endless growth. Their ideas began to influence policies around the world. Several countries started to implement financial education programs based on the models Carlos and Marcos developed. Some even started experimenting with new measures of economic success that went beyond traditional GDP, incorporating measures of well-being and sustainability. However, not everyone was happy. Carlos and Marcos faced strong opposition from some parts of the traditional financial industry. Critics argued that their ideas were naive or even dangerous to economic stability. They had to learn to navigate difficult political situations and defend their ideas against sometimes fierce attacks. Despite the challenges, they remained steadfast in their mission. They knew they were fighting not just for financial education, but for a fundamentally different vision of how the economy could work, one that benefited everyone, not just a privileged few. One of the most ambitious projects they launched during this period was the Global Fund for Financial Innovation. This fund provided seed capital for startups and projects that were developing groundbreaking and inclusive financial solutions. The fund supported a wide array of projects, ranging from blockchain-based microfinance apps to social impact investment platforms. Meanwhile, the mentorship program they had started years earlier was bearing incredible fruit. Many of their ments were now leading their own organizations and initiatives, expanding and evolving the work Carlos and Marcos had begun. Seeing this a multiplier effect there in action was one of the most rewarding things for both of them. One of these ments, Sophia, had developed a revolutionary financial education program for refugees and migrants. The program not only taught basic financial literacy skills but also helped people navigate the financial systems of their new countries and build credit. Sophia's program's success garnered international attention and was being implemented in refugee camps around the world. Another mentee, Miguel, had created a crowdfunding platform focused on community development projects in rural areas. The platform allowed people from all over the world to invest directly in small businesses and infrastructure projects in remote communities. Miguel's project was literally transforming local economies and creating opportunities where there had previously been little hope. Seeing the impact their ments were having, Carlos and Marcos decided to expand their mentorship program even further. They launched the Academy of Future Financial Leaders, an intensive one-year program that brought together promising young people from around the world. The program not only taught financial and leadership skills but also encouraged participants to think critically about the future of global finance and economics. As they approached their 60s, Carlos and Marcos began to think seriously about succession and legacy. They wanted to ensure that the work of Horizon Financial would continue and evolve long after they retired. This led them to embark on a careful succession planning process, identifying and preparing the next generation of leaders to take over the organization. Reflecting on their journey, Carlos and Marcos could hardly believe how far they had come from their days in the small factory in their hometown. They had transformed not only their own lives but the lives of millions of people around the world. Most importantly, they had helped to change the global conversation about money, wealth, and success. They knew that their work was far from over. The world's economic and financial challenges continued to evolve, and new issues were constantly emerging. But looking at the global network of educators, entrepreneurs, and leaders they had helped to create, they felt confident about the future. Carlos and Marcos had proven that the wealthy mindset wasn't about accumulating riches for oneself, but about creating abundance for everyone. They had shown that with the right education, the right mindset, and the determination to make a difference, anyone could not only transform their own financial life but also contribute to a more prosperous and equitable world. And so, as they prepared to pass the torch to the next generation, Carlos and Marcos knew that their legacy would live on. The seed they had planted so many years ago had grown into a vibrant forest of knowledge, innovation, and hope. And that forest would continue to grow and expand, nurturing future generations with the tools and mindset needed to thrive in an ever-changing world. Their journey proved that true wealth is not just in the numbers in a bank account, but in the ability to create positive impact, to lift others up, and to contribute to a better world. And that, perhaps, is the most valuable lesson of all about the wealthy mindset versus the poor mindset, that true success is measured not just by what we accumulate for ourselves, but by the legacy we leave for others.